I'm here with Tia Austin, author of Haven's Key, being published through Global Summit House. Tia, welcome to the show. I'm really pleased you're here.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about, before we get into Haven's Key specifically, tell everybody a little bit about how you got into being an author.
Well, when I was a little girl, I used to write little stories. And then when I was a senior in high school, I actually decided to try to write a book. And I wrote out a book, but I never let anyone read it because I thought, this isn't going to be as good as real authors. And so to this day, no one's read it, but I've made some changes on it since then. I've tweaked it and made it better. And I plan in a couple of years to get it published as well.
When you think about making that decision to be an author as a senior in high school and you look back on it now, what are the things that you think other aspiring authors should be thinking about?
Well, just, if you get an idea, just go with it. There's um a plan that you can use to organize your thoughts. That I use. I call it the Christmas tree method.
Hmm.
You start with one sentence. If someone says, "What's your book about?" you answer with one sentence. Then on and you write that on paper. Then you take that one sentence and turn it into four sentences about what your book is about. Then you take those four sentences and turn them into four paragraphs. And then you turn those four paragraphs into 4 pages. So you have a whole summary of what your book is about. So when you're actually writing it, you have basically a blueprint of what to go off of. And you also create a page for each main character, what they look like, what their backstory is, if they have any quirks, what their personality is, things like that. So you have a blueprint for your characters as well.
That must make a huge difference in terms of consistency of writing throughout the book and knowing how those characters are established and having, I imagine it's almost like an outline of
Yeah,
how this book is going to grow.
it keeps you on track because if you start to skid off on a tangent, the 4 pages that you wrote. So this is what's supposed to happen next. So how do I make sure that I get back to that? Or even if I have to scribble out some things and reroute my scene to get back on track.
And that's really served you over the years, hasn't it?
Yes, very much.
Because you've authored a number of books. Haven's Key certainly isn't the first one, is it?
No, there's a trilogy.
Tell everybody a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Well, I wrote the first book and I intended it just to be one book. And then I told my friends about it and I got some books from the publishing company and we were in a book club. So I told them about it and they all wanted a copy. So they all bought a copy and we read it for our book club and they all really liked it. And they said, "It can't end there. What's next? There's got to be more." So I thought about it and the next summer, I started thinking of ideas of how to continue the story, and it started getting so long and I'm like, "This can't be this is too long compared to the size of Haven's Key, the amount of pages." I'm like, "This needs to be 2 books. This needs to be divided into 2 books because it was getting so long."
And then it actually became a third.
Yeah, so I have 3.
So this is the Haven series trilogy. And tell
Yes.
everybody the books that are in it.
Haven's Key, Haven's Light, and Haven's Joy.
And so Haven's Key is the first in the trilogy. Is that right?
Yes.
So just out of curiosity, what was that first sentence you wrote about the Havens trilogy or Haven's Key specifically? That first sentence in the Christmas tree.
Well, that didn't come until later. I came up with a scene in my mind to start the story off. I was just daydreaming about a story and a scene came to mind. So that was how it began. But to sum up what it's about a man who's been a thief his whole life and he runs into a group of people who are trying to find a mysterious lost city that's supposed to be a perfect place. And he has to decide whether or not he's going to join them or go off on his own and try to find his own way.
And is that Brace?
Yes.
So tell everybody a little bit about Brace and kind of a little more about his background and his character.
Well, when he was about 8 years old, his mother passed away, and he didn't know who his father was. So he was an orphan, and he got taken in by a farmer who was supposed to take care of him, but he made him do a lot of work, and he didn't take care of him very well. He mistreated him, he yelled at him a lot, and sometimes he'd, not really beat him, but he was just rough with him and didn't feed him very much. And so one day Brace decided he'd had enough, and he stole some food from the pantry and ran away.
Hmm.
And he'd been running, and then he'd just be sneaky and steal food and whatever he wanted. And for 20 years he did that, and he went from city to city if he thought people were being suspicious. And he just, he messed around and um saw whatever dated women from bars and things like that, and just lived his life selfishly.
So, what changes for him in Haven's Key?
Well, at first, when he meets a group of people, he's suspicious of them, and he wonders why they're out there and why they're being so welcoming. Most of them were being welcoming for him to come and, you know, join them for the day, for the evening. And people had never treated him that way. He's always been used to people just kind of being rude or ignoring him. He's like, why are they being so kind? And he at first he doesn't decide whether or not he wants to follow them. He kind of go. In fact, at one point, he leaves and goes off on his own. But then there's a windstorm, and it causes a sandstorm. And he finds the people who they find him, and they say, "Come with us, we'll help you." And so they set up a tent to hide during the sandstorm. So then he starts getting the feeling that he should stay with them. The older man in the story, Ovard,
Hmm.
convinces him that he believes it's kind of like fate that they're supposed to be together, because what are the odds of them finding each other in the sandstorm?
And is it fate?
Um, well, it's more like divine plan, divine planning.
I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. Tell everybody what Brace has to come to kind of terms with in terms of being with Ovard in this new group.
He gets to know each individual person, and he doesn't trust them at first, and he doesn't know them, and he doesn't know he's not sure if he wants to get to know them. Just as things go along, he starts developing a friendship and a like liking for Tassie. He starts becoming attracted to Tassie. And the boy, Jair, he the he wants to be his friend, and he asks him a lot of questions about his life, and he starts just getting, friendships with the people.
And is that going to be Brace's future with this group of people, or is this something that's going to be something that he's going to have to reckon with?
He's gonna stay with them. Yeah.
Tell everybody a little bit about what they can expect from the story overall.
Well, it's about your choices that you make in life, the choices that he made as a young child, and the choices that he has to choose now, whether he's going to change, or if he's just going to run off to some other city and keep going the way he was going on the path of his life, or if he's going to choose a new path, and potentially, something great.
Talk a little bit about what Haven represents for you and in the story.
Well, Haven is basically a representation of heaven, where everything is perfect and there's nothing evil can enter there. No one with a evil intent can come into the city. When they come in, they have to want to live there peacefully. No one can come through the gates unless, if they have a heart of, I'm going to take over this city and use it for my purposes. And, they can't enter the city.
I mean, it must be a real change of perspective for him based on how he lived his life prior for 20 years and now looking at Haven as a very different place where what he did growing up probably isn't going to work very well, is it?
Right, he thinks, "I don't belong here, I'm not," the city let me in, but he doesn't know why, he doesn't know what his future holds, and it's just a mystery to him, and he's like, I don't have a pure heart, my heart isn't pure," but he came in wanting to live there peacefully, so
And do you think that Brace does have in reality a pure heart?
I would say so. Just he's developed a more pure heart as the story goes along,
Hmm.
because he starts out very selfish, and he changes as the story goes along.
Hmm. How does this story, from your perspective, relate to what people go through in real life?
Well, just the choices that you make can lead to something good or to something bad, depending on what you choose, the path you decide to follow in your life.
And do you think that the story advocates for moving towards a life with a purer heart?
Yes, toward yourself and toward others.
When you say toward yourself, what does that mean to you, and how do you kind of see that applying to Brace? Like, I think if I think about moving towards myself in a lot of ways, I think of that as clearing out a lot of garbage that I may have, a lot of baggage that I may have accumulated over the years. Is there an analogy there?
Yes, yes, definitely. Taking care of yourself and choosing the right things for yourself and the way that you view yourself. Do you see yourself as worth it? You know,
And what do you think for Brace that process is of finding his worthiness?
the way he's treated by the group that he starts traveling with, the way they treat him, he just starts understanding that he's not someone to be ignored or to be, um, mistreated,
Discarded, that sort of thing.
discarded. Yes.
Talk a little bit about Ovard and the group with Jair and Tassie, who Brace is becoming attracted to. Talk a little bit about the character of that group.
Well, Ovard is an elderly man, and he's very wise. He has studied different books on different subjects his whole life, and when he discovered that the possibility of Haven really existing, he's been studying maps and legends, and he's been getting his hands on anything he can find out about Haven and where it might be, and what's true about it and things like that. And so he's sort of the leader of the group.
So, what do you think that Ovard's group sees in him that Brace doesn't see in himself?
They see his potential to be a part of, leaving his past behind and choosing a good path towards helping find the city and just being a part of their group.
Do they find Haven in this book?
Yes, they do. The book ends with them finding the city gate,
Hmm.
and they're like, "Wow, this is Haven. This is real." And in the markings on Jer's face inside the quarter moon, there are like letters. They didn't realize they were letters, but there is like the gate is made of stone, and off to the side there are like, not really call them buttons, but stone blocks that protrude from the wall, and you have to press in the wooden or the stone blocks to in the right order in order for the gate to open. So you have to know the password, if you want to call it that. So they do that, and the gates open, and the city is just like everything is kind of a really pale gray or white, and it's been empty for thousands of years, and so everything is pristine, and it's just, and then Jer, he like they're looking for something to eat or some water, and he just automatically somehow knows where to find those things. He just seems to have a connection with the city.
When you look at writing this book, the first book in this trilogy, what is the most exciting thing for you in looking at how it's turned out?
I think it's just that Jair has this uncanny um, relationship with the city, basically, and that Brace comes to believe in the city when they're truly believe when they're there, and his relationship with Tassie and the rest of them, they all eventually become friends. There's one character who used to work for the king, and he was an archer, and he left with his wife, and so he's basically abandoned his post in the royal order to help find the city. And so at first he's very, very mistrusting of Brace, but they eventually become friends. And his relationship with Tassie, she starts, she sees potential in him, and
Tassie
she,
sees potential embrace.
yes, yes, and so he starts trying to see that as well, and they get to the point where they love each other, and at the end of the book. So at the end of the book, the last thing, here I have the book right here. The last sentence of the book is Jair smiled, getting everything ready to welcome everyone here, starting with Kendi. He turned, fixing his eyes on Brace. And then we'll have a wedding. So that's how the first book ends.
I love that. I love that. It seems to me like a primary theme of Haven's Key is redemption. Is that true?
Yes, yes, redemption and relationships.
And what do you think people who read this, what's the message to them, to the reader? Like, is it about knowing that there is a pure heart in everybody and that there is redemption? Talk about that from the standpoint of what you'd like them to take away from that.
Well, the main point is no matter who you are or what you've done, if you choose to live differently and you choose to, a better path for your life, and then it's basically an analogy of going to heaven. You don't have to be perfect, but if you have the heart for God, then you'll be in heaven at the when at the end. But this is a place on earth that would represent heaven. That's why it's called Haven's Key.
I love that. What's the one thing you want your readers to know about why this is a book that they should be picking up?
Well, I just feel like it has, adventure and just the person, it's the deep, um, not personalities, but the personal, your own personal life and your own personal heart, and and some finding similarity with one of the characters, whether it's Brace or one of the other characters in the group, and just comparing it to their own lives, and they can find um, something good, instead of focusing on, oh, I'm terrible because I'm like this or I've done that, or they can find hope.
Hope and redemption. I like
Yes.
it. Tia Austin, you're the author of Haven's Key. You can find it by searching Haven's Key online and it'll come right up. It's the first of three in a trilogy. Tell everybody the name of the trilogy again.
The Haven Trilogy.
And if you want to have a chance to chat with Tia, you can go to Facebook and search for Tia Ladybug Austin.
Yes.
Thank you so much for doing this. Best of luck in the second book and the third book. They sound compelling right out the gate, Tia. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you.